In today's show, I'm going to tell you why my expectations for the Trailblazers have changed. This team should be a play-in team at a minimum. Welcome to Locked On Blazers. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Trailblazers, your daily Portland Trailblazers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's up, world? It's your past first point guard and Trailblazers reporter, Mike Richmond. You're listening to another episode of Locked On Blazers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, available wherever you get podcasts and also on YouTube. Thanks for making this show your first listen. Coming at you each and every weekday, Monday through Friday. So make it a part of your daily routine. Make your first listen. Tell your friends to do the same. Locked On Blazers, your team every day. In today's show, I want to tell you about my changing expectations. I think the Blazers should be at a minimum have the expectation to make the play-in at a minimum. And that is a dramatic shift for me. Well, I will get into it. It starts with them being a good defensive team. I've got some numbers to back it up. I shared these with you back in July, but re-looking at them a little bit closer here as we get closer to the season, I just think there is enough evidence to say that this team should consider itself a play-in team. That should be a reasonable goal at a minimum. I want to talk about sort of, because I think they're going to be really good on defense, sort of the baseline that sets that kind of helps offset some of their other challenges, because obviously they have to play on the other side of the ball, and I think their offense is going to be pretty shaky this year. But also, like, if you're going to make the play-in, you're going to make the postseason, you're going to be a team that competes for a playoff spot. You need some help along the way. What, like, the mishaps that befall the teams between you and a playoff berth, they matter, and there's already some things working in the Blazers' favor to begin the season. So I think things, for me at least, have shifted. Let me set the stage, because I know I have some new listeners. I've been pretty consistent that I think the Blazers are like a top 11 team in the West. And that alone should make you think like, you can make the freaking play-in if 10 teams get in and you're one of the 11 best teams. But like, it was more, I would say, I would usually couch it by saying they have a path to 11th. I just, like, Utah is not going to try to win, right? That they're probably not good enough to win, and they're going to play a bunch of youngsters. They're not interested in winning. Okay, so the Blazers are going to be better than Utah. I think the Blazers are better than Phoenix. I think they're better than Sacramento. Obviously, like, Devin Booker's really good, and maybe the top end talent in at least the name recognition in Sacramento is better. But neither of those teams make sense. Like, the Blazers roster, for all of its warts, just makes a lot more sense and is a lot more functional than both of those teams. I think the Blazers are better than Phoenix. I think they're better than Sacramento, and I think they're probably better than New Orleans too. New Orleans, their roster is a little bit wonky. Jordan Poole starting at point guard is a little bit wonky. I don't hate their starting group with Poole and Herb Jones and Trey Murphy and Zion, but Zion playing 75 games seems like a stretch, and the games without Zion, I think they're going to be rough. And in general, their whole front court rotation and the number of point guards they have on the team, those strike me as a little bit dicey. Like, how you put together lineups that fit. Zion's really good when he plays. I think he can be like one of the 10 or 15, probably 15 or 20 best players in the league at his absolute peak. How often do you see that? How often does he play? He's a big question mark. I think the Blazers are better than Pelicans, because I think they have a little more insulation against that, although they don't have the top-end talent of Zion Williamson at his absolute best. I think they're better than those four teams in the West. I would just say right now, I think they will finish ahead of those teams in the West. And that hasn't really changed. But I feel stronger about it now that I look into it. And what I looked into, and here's where the sort of, so that's catching you up. Welcome, new listeners. That's what I've been thinking all summer. I'm a little firmer in it now as we get closer to the season. And that's because I revisited something I talked about in July. This was a part of an episode when DeAndre Ayton got waived. Or maybe when he signed with the Lakers. It was one of those two. It was a DeAndre Ayton lead episode, and then I shared some sort of thoughts on what if the Blazers have a top 10 defense. And when I put together those couple segments, or a segment, however long it talked, 15 minutes or so, on the sort of brief history of top 10 defenses in the league over the last 5 years, what I learned should have maybe hit a little bit harder, maybe should have landed a little bit stronger with me, but revisiting that show, shout out to my everydayers, maybe y'all already knew this, man, and we're like, Mike, get on board, you idiot. It can take me a little while sometimes, but I'm on board now. And what I learned by looking back at the top 10 defenses over the last 5 seasons. So that's like the post-bubble seasons, right? The bubble's weird. I don't want to include that season, and going back any further and like omitting the bubble seems weird. So we're just going to do the last 5 seasons. So since the 2020-2021 season, that short season that started in December, 72 games. Since then, there's been 50 top 10 defenses, right? 5 seasons, 10 teams, 50 top 10 defenses. 49 teams with a top 10 defense have made the play-in. 49 teams with a top 10 defense over the past 5 seasons have made the play-in. And the Blazers have a path to being a top 5 defense. An obvious one. At the end of last season, they were not just a top 10 defense, right? Not just a top 10 defense. They were one of the 5 best defenses in basketball over the final 41 games. Some of that is soft schedule. Some of that is maybe the silly season of March and April, but it's also undeniable for 41 games, they were a top 5 defense. You can't, at some point you can't fake the funk, right? I will readily admit that it was a soft schedule. I'll readily admit that I probably wouldn't put them at 5, right? This isn't the 3rd best defense in the league. I have mentioned in the past that some of this, the magic of them having one of the 5 best defenses in the league for the final 41 games of last year is some benefiting from opponent 3-point luck. Let's say that comes back to about league average. Okay, they're going to be a little bit worse. But then they replaced DeAndre Ayton in the starting lineup with Donovan Clingan, who was a very effective defender by any measurement, and an extremely effective defender by rookie measurements, comparing him to fellow rookies in his first season. And to close the year, he anchored some really good defensive lineups. He was really useful, and you're going to play him a bunch more minutes this year. And then you also replaced Anthony Simons in the lineup with Drew Holiday. Obviously, Drew Holiday is 35, but his track record suggests that even at 35, he'll be a significant upgrade over Anthony Simons. Drew, at his peak, was, the best guard defender of his generation, probably. Certainly one of them. I think Drew Holiday's going to make the Hall of Fame, and he's going to make the Hall of Fame on the back of being one of the best defenders in his era, one of the best guard defenders in his era. Better personnel mixed with slightly worse shooting luck. I don't think it drops them to being a bad defensive team because of the upgrade in personnel, even if the shooting luck does kind of even out. I think they have a very, 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 very clean path to being one of the top 10 defenses in the NBA. And if you have a top 10 defense in the NBA, you are almost always a play-in team. 49 of the last 50 teams to finish with a top 10 defense in the league have made the play-in at a minimum. In fact, 44 of those 50 teams have made the playoffs. That means over the past 5 seasons, only 6 teams that have finished with a top 10 defense have missed the playoffs. Only 6 teams that have finished with a top 10 defense over the past 5 seasons have missed the playoffs. If you have a top 10 defense, you have a path. So who's missed the playoffs, right? It's teams with below average offenses. And that's the concern for the Blazers, right? Because I do think they're going to be worse on offense. DeAndre Ayton was their best offensive center. Anthony Simons was not positively impactful overall for the Blazers offense last year. If you just look on his on-off numbers, but his skill set was valuable, right? And he was part of some of their better lineups. Although I think there's a relatively clean argument that they're both going to miss his shooting and be able to replace some of his overall impacts. But I do think they'll miss his shooting. So the 6 teams that have missed over the last 5 years. In 2021, the Warriors missed the playoffs. They made the play-in though. They had a top 5 defense, and they were 21st on offense. Then Cavs in 2022. These numbers, the offense-defense numbers, courtesy of NBA.com. You might get them other places that might be a little bit different, but same idea. 2022, the Cavs were 6th on defense, 19th on offense. They missed the playoffs. The Clippers in 2022, 7th on defense, 24th on offense. The following year in 2023, the Pelicans, 6th on defense, 18th on offense. They missed the playoffs. The Bulls, in 2023, 5th on defense, 24th on offense. They missed the playoffs. But all of those teams made the play-in. Only one team over the last 5 years has had a top 10 defense, has put together a top 10 defense over 82 games and outright missed the play-in. And it was the 2024 Rockets, who went 41-41. And the teams that made the play-in that year won 48 games. A truly, truly bizarre year, because the 10th best team in the West won 48 games. The Rockets finished 11th. They're the only team over the last 5 years to put together a top 10 defense and miss the play-in and not play any postseason games, not play a game after the regular season. But again, most teams make the playoffs, right? Most of these teams make the playoffs. Again, like the caveat and the obvious one that you're saying here is that these below average teams, below average offensive teams. I agree with you, right? I think that is good sound logic to lean on here. But I'd like to offer some sort of contextualizing and maybe even pushback against something that perhaps I believed a few months ago but have changed my tune on, because I do think having a really, really good defense sets a baseline, and the Blazers have places to climb from a really solid baseline. Let's talk about that in the second segment. Join me there. First, though, let's talk FanDuel. Football season is here, and FanDuel's got a deal you do not want to miss. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and then you're going to get $300 in bonus bets if that first bet wins. Pretty simple, right? You pick a bet, you put down $5, and if it hits, you'll unlock $300 in bonus bets to use across the FanDuel app. So you can get in on wagering once you get those $300 in bonus bets any way you know how. Parlays, player props, following games and betting them live as they happen. Whatever you're into, you're going to find that action on FanDuel. So what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com to download the FanDuel app today and get started. All right. So I want to acknowledge this. Of this 44 teams, 44 of the last 50 teams to have a top 10 defense that made the playoffs. That's true. That's a fact, right? Top 10 defense gives you a damn good shot. But also good teams are good, and I think let's not get lost in that. Good teams are good. Of those 44 teams that have sported a top 10 defense and made it into the true playoffs, out of the play-in, because the Warriors in 2021, the Cavs in 2022, Clippers that same year, Pelicans and Bulls in 2023. All of those teams made the play-in and lost, right? 49 of 50 teams who have had a top 10 defense have made the play-in. And the team that didn't, the Rockets went 41-41, which for the Blazers would be a 5-game improvement over last year. A top 10 defense is a solid baseline. But admittedly, most of these, you make the playoffs with a top 10 defense are because teams are good, right? Teams are good. Good teams are good. Like the Celtics and the Oklahoma City Thunder of last year, top 10 on both sides of the ball, right? It's like, oh yeah. Of course they had a top 10 defense. They also had the third best offense in the league, right? So of those 44 teams that have sported top 10 defenses and made the playoffs, 29 of them have also had above average offenses. I don't think the Blazers are likely to be in that category. But that does also mean, importantly, is that 15 teams over the last 5 years have made the playoffs with a top 10 defense and a below average offense. On average, about 3 a year make the playoffs sporting a below average offense, like say the Orlando Magic of last season, straight up bad offense, and a top 10 defense, a very good one. Some of those teams obviously finished 10th, and I am, when I say that the Blazers should be at minimum, believing they should be a play-in team, I do mean like 9th or 10th should be at a minimum expectation for this team, because that's how good I think they can be on defense. But I want to say this, like, you know, they built this identity last year. Toumani Camara is a really good defender. I think Donovan Clingan's a really good defender. Yeah, Drew Holiday, who's a really competent defender, at times an elite one. Again, but it's like he's older, right? I don't want to make promises for 35-year-old Drew Holiday, although I do think he's going to be a pretty good, helpful defensive player, and he's not going to get the like chase around a super fast guard. He's just not going to get that assignment. It won't happen for him unless there's some weird injuries. But like they're not going to stick him in that role. That'll be Toumani's role, and Drew will guard up like he's capable of. Deni Avdija is an above average defender, or at least capable of being a really good part of, like competitive, physical, and fast enough to be interested in being and be part of like some really, really good defensive groups. I think with the ask that he has on offense, his defense is just naturally going to slip because you only have so much energy. But Denny is a capable defensive player, and at times just a straight up good one. Like he's a plus defender. He made his name in the league by being a really good defender, but also back then he just had to stand in the corner and watch Russell Westbrook and Brad Beal. Things done change. He's now the engine of the offense. He will get less responsibility. The Blazers leaned into a lineup last year where Jeremy Grant shared the court with Toumani Camara and Denny Avdia. They played basically 3 forwards around Simons and either DeAndre Ayton or Donovan Clingan, like a center, 3 big, 6'8" plus forwards. Toumani Camara might only be like 6'7", 6'7" plus forwards who are physical and fast and good defensive players, and then they crafted some pretty good defensive lineups even with Anthony Simons. You sub Drew Holiday into those minutes. You get more Matisse Thybulle, who missed almost the entirety of last season and certainly the competitive portion of last season. You put him in a bunch of minutes. You move Chris Murray from this sort of like you have to play every night to a luxury deep bench role. Yeah, that's going to be helpful. Blake Wesley, because the Blazers love like dudes who defend and can't shoot. They added him to the mix, and now with Scoot Henderson missing time, who's a negative defender thus far in his career, now even like your random backup point guard that you ask is probably the best thing he does is defend. The Blazers can put out some mean defensive lineups. If Rob Williams is healthy and gives them anything, they're going to be nasty on defense. They have a path to being top 10. They have a path. I think their ceiling is top 5. Like I don't think you can assume perfect health. I think that's unfair. But if you assume like reasonable health, even when they miss time, like there's going to be, this week they're missing some good defenders. But just like on the whole, this is like a team that could easily be somewhere between like the 3rd and 9th best defensive team in the league. And it wouldn't be surprising at all. In fact, based on the way that they've treated training camp, where they say, this is our identity. We spent the first 2 days, 90% defense is what they told reporters after the first 2 days of camp. Like, this is who they are. This is who they want to be. They want to pick up full court. They want to have, really high pickup points. They want to pressure the ball. They want to protect the rim, run guys off the 3-point line, force them into traffic. This is absolutely their identity. And one that they proved for the latter half of last season, the last 41 games of last season, that they're capable of doing at a pretty darn good level. Even if you think like the 3rd best defense in the league is a bit of a mirage, the fact that they are a good defensive team is, I think, undeniable. Even my loudest cynics, although this show goes out on the internet, I'm sure we'll find someone who has a bad opinion. But when you have that defensive baseline, if you are that good every night for 82 games, if you are the 6th best defensive team in the league or the 8th best defensive team in the league, then the ask for the other guys that I think are the scary stuff gets easier. And that's why I feel like this should be at a minimum a team that makes the play-in. So like Shaedon Sharpe was a bad 3-point shooter last year. It's a huge part of his the floor of his game. Like I think that's shooting is a floor skill for Shaedon Sharpe. It's not a ceiling skill. That's going to be other stuff, passing and defending. But like, if he's going to be like a long-term above average shooting guard, he's going to have to shoot somewhere around league average from 3, if not above it. But if you're really good on defense, Shaedon Sharpe doesn't need to shoot 40% from 3 to make it work. He needs to shoot like 35, like just a shade under league average on some volume and still be a good mid-range shooter and a guy who gets to the rim. It gives you a little more wiggle room to say, well, we don't need to be like, our offense just needs to be a little bit better. It also sets a baseline where if Young Hansen, who's probably going to play a lot, might be the backup center on opening night. I think he's tracking in that direction because Rob Williams has yet to return to 5-on-5 full contact practice. Like if Young Hansen, who's 20 years old and is it's going to be a tough adjustment for him. I think he's very smart and skilled, but like in terms of like positively impactful rookies are typically negative impact players, and if they are positively impactful, it's the second half of the season. But if Hansen is like passable on defense, like he can kind of like fake the funk a little bit and be big. He doesn't even have to be like good for this to all work out. He just needs to be a functional part of the team, like a mildly functional part of the team. Again, baseline of really good defense. It allows you to work in your young center and let him get on court reps that he desperately needs to kind of figure it out, right? It gives you this baseline because you're going to be really good on defense in even in the minutes that Hansen doesn't play. If Jeremy Grant remembers to make layups, shot 40% on layups according to Basketball Reference last year. He remembers make layups. Say he makes 58% of them, 55% of them, which still wouldn't be a great number for his size, but he just remembers to make layups at like a normal level. Well, yeah, okay, now like the baseline, because you're good on defense, the ask isn't for Jeremy Grant to rediscover himself or reinvent himself. It's like, hey, could you make some layups? Yeah, it's the ask for each player. If you're going to be really good on defense, it just gets smaller. What you need gets smaller. And if you get other stuff, if Shaedon Sharpe does become a magically 40% 3-point shooter, if Young Hansen is very early in his NBA career like a pretty useful NBA player, if Jeremy Grant does remember that you can score inside the arc, like it's gravy, right? They're going to be in there then like it's a huge boost, right? Because they're going to be a lot better. And I think importantly, one of the reasons that I think they should be at a minimum have a goal of being expectation. Minimum expectation should be in the play-in is because they're going to go all out. They're not going to punt, kind of last year, they said like at the very end of the year, they said, we're not going all out. They put like they sort of lightly capped it, right? They had a minutes restriction, quote unquote, for Denny Avdia and Toumani Camara, and said they couldn't play 35 minutes. And then also Chauncey Billups chose to play those 35 minutes in the first 45 minutes of the game, right? Or the first, so they like couldn't play at the end of games based on some of the decisions they made, right? I don't think they're going to do that this year. They're not going to sort of like halfway care about the final 6 games of the regular season. They're going to play, they're not going to, last year I think they played it straight up till about game 77 or 78. This year we'll get to game 82 and they'll still be playing it straight up. That's another reason that the expectation should be that they're a play-in team. The other part of this is that they're going to need some help because the West is crowded. And so far, they seem to be getting a little bit of help. And also, there's this squishy middle of the West that they can take advantage of. Let's talk about that squishy middle and some help that they've already received in the third segment. Join me there. First, though, let's talk Monarch Money. You know that most people can't even name all of their investments, all their financial accounts, whether it's 401ks, properties, or other investments. When you don't have the full picture, you can end up leaving money on the table. So that's why there's Monarch Money. It's an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or on your phone. Monarch is built for people with busy lives. If you've put off organizing your finances, Monarch is for you. Monarch does the heavy lifting for you. So you can link all of your accounts in minutes, see clear data visuals, get smart categorization of your spending, and finally feel in control of your money without ever touching a spreadsheet. It can help you find your inefficient investment allocations, discover lost 401ks from past jobs that you haven't tracked down, or if you share finances with anyone, it can make sure everyone's on the same page, all in one simple, clean app. So don't let financial opportunity slip through the cracks. Use the code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with the code LOCKEDONNBA. Still a pass first point guard. I'm still Mike Richmond. You're still listening to Locked On Blazers. Part of the reason I've mentioned this on previous shows that I think the Blazers should have stronger belief. And I will say at Media Day, they stopped, particularly Joe Cronin stopped short of saying an expectation should be to make the play-in. But if the Blazers, if they finish 11th, I guess some of the math I shared with you on defense, some of the math I shared with you goes out the window. We'll have to recalibrate. But they're going to be pretty good on defense. They have the personnel to be a top 10 defense. I think that's real. Even with the shooting regression, the more I sort of lean into this and look at this and think about this team, it's like this should be at a minimum an above average defense and at a maximum an elite defensive team. And to me, if you're somewhere between 13-1, 10 should be a reasonable goal. And if you're a top 10 defense, the long history of this league, at least the last 5 years, the last 5 years of the NBA suggests those teams make the play-in. At a minimum, the expectation should be this team makes the play-in, because if they're going to be that good on defense, you got to believe. Or at least if you're going to be that good on defense, you don't want to be an anomaly. Hey, this is usually teams this good do not struggle this much, and I think the baseline of being really good on defense should put the Blazers in the conversation. But part of that conversation includes other teams from the West. And I mentioned this in the past. There's like a squishy middle to me of the West, or like a sort of a soft middle. I think the teams at the top are just like in another, like I think Denver and OKC are on another level. Minnesota's really good. They're kind of weird because it's like, are they really how good? And then like they've made the Western Conference Finals a couple years in a row. So they're good. They're really good. And I think I think the baseline with their defense with Gobert and the improvement of Anthony Edwards, like I think they're in those top 4 teams. I do think prior to the Fred VanVleet injury, I would have said Houston's right up there. They were really reliant on him because of their point guard depth. And he's not like he's going to miss a few weeks and they'll figure it out. He's going to miss, maybe the entire year, likely the entire year. So I think Houston's up there, and I think they could be really good, but I think they're that's a little bit wonky. But then the middle of the pack in the West is a variety of like teams that are like supremely talented but old. Oh, and like all the California teams are old. Sacramento's old and not good, but like the Lakers are old and really top heavy, right? If they're missing either Luka or LeBron, they're like not that good. Luka's obviously young, but like they're top heavy. And one of their best players is going to turn 41 and perhaps is announcing tomorrow as you listen to this will be his final year. The Clippers are like comically old. They're really good and really deep. And I think like, have I'm operating under the assumption that nothing happens to Kawhi Leonard during the season. I think I bet it won't happen. Hopefully the Clippers get punished because it seems like they did it. Okay. But like, I think it'll be a little bit slower for the sort of justice, the wheels of justice to turn against the Clippers. And like, they're really old. They don't have many young players who are going to play at all. Their whole lineup is like dudes who are 29 plus. So, but like they're really good. But again, like when you're elderly, when you're an older team playing professional basketball, like you're just fragile, right? Guys are going to miss time because it's just the nature of bodies. And the Warriors are their group is really good. And I think if they're healthy, they're awesome. Like they won 48 games last year. I don't really they did that with kind of a wonky lineup and Steph missing time and all this, like, and all these things. They're good. It's just like everyone on the team is in, like, their key players are all in their middle 30s, and like who was their big ad this summer? A man who's almost 40 in Al Horford, like talented but old, right? And then some of the other teams that are like in that same sort of tier of like, hey, you think they're going to make the playoffs, but are like the Grizzlies. Zach Edey's going to miss time. Brandon Clark is had another surgery. Jaren Jackson Jr. is currently hurt and not participating, but is aiming, quote unquote, to be back for opening night. But we'll see. Ja Morant on Monday reportedly hurt his ankle and is now week to week with a sprained ankle injury that he sustained at practice. Like the Grizzlies are beat up again. This is like basically what I'm calling like the PJ Hall watch. It's like they just don't have enough bigs. Like if Triple J comes back, they're gonna be good. They were good last year, and the Grizzlies are the best team in the league at just like having Gigi Jackson. They're like, just like, here's a guy we got in the second round and he's pretty good. Like a Vince Williams, John Conchar magic that the Grizzlies always seem to have. But like their front line is Jock Landale and Santi Aldama and PJ Hall. Like that yeah, is that a playoff team, right? The Mavs. I think the Mavs are deep. Like I think they're deep. They have a lot of interesting depth. A lot of that interesting depth are people who don't play guard, but like they're a deep and talented team. I think they might be, depending on sort of Anthony Davis's health. They're might be pretty darn competitive still, but they're just like pretty reliant on Anthony Davis to score for them, probably depending on how good Cooper Flagg is early in his career. But I don't expect him to be like a reliable, like down the stretch bucket getter right away. And Kyrie Irving tore his ACL in March of last year. Like realistically, he's not coming back until February. Probably March. Like it's 10, 11, 12 months to recover from those types of things. And like the Mavs without Kyrie Irving are not like world beaters. They're a team that is like probably flirting with low 40s wins, right? And that's assuming pretty good health. The Spurs, De'Aaron Fox is going to miss the start of the season with a hamstring injury. Dylan Harper had thumb surgery. It sounds like he's going to be good to go for opening night, but like they're already a little bit banged up, and like back to the Steph Castle show. If the Spurs are healthy and De'Aaron Fox is rolling, they're pretty good. If the Mavs are healthy and Anthony Davis is rolling, they're pretty good. If the Grizzlies get back and get going, they're pretty good too. But all of those teams that are kind of in that tier, Grizzlies, Mavs, Spurs, and then the older teams in California, the Lakers, Clippers, Warriors, they all have at least enough faults that you think if the Blazers benefit from some good luck of their own, there are enough teams that could slip that makes me think not only should the Blazers be a team that aims for the play-in, the expectation at a minimum should be that this is a play-in team. I did not think that a month ago. I'm not sure I thought that 10 days ago. I'm not sure I thought that Friday. But when I started putting this together on Sunday afternoon, maybe Sunday morning, if you really want to know how it works out, sitting at my laptop on a beautiful Sunday morning here in Portland, Oregon, I started to look at these numbers and just my opinion has changed. I think at a minimum, the expectation should be that the Blazers are a play-in team this year. A top 10 defense basically guarantees you a play-in spot. And the West has enough iffy stuff ahead of the Blazers that a play-in spot and more is on the table for them. It's there for them. I have not been this way about this team all summer long. This might be October hype nonsense, right? But I think the Blazers have a path to being a 500 level team because of their defense. I think they have a path to being competitive beyond that if they get a little bit of luck, and I think we'll see what other teams in the West are like. The expectation at a minimum should be the Blazers are a play-in team. Putting my stamp on it. Come back for tomorrow's show. We will preview the Blazers' first preseason game. You will not want to miss it. Tell your friends about the program. Tell them they can get it wherever they get podcasts and also on YouTube. I appreciate you listening. I'll talk to you soon.